Let's see if we can't get the rest of the class in here. That would be great. Alrighty, so as people are coming in, we're going to get started here. Good morning. Obviously, if any of you guys are there in person today, you'll notice that I am not there. I'm at home. So I do want to address that. There was a positive COVID test in one of my classes. Due to that, due to contact tracing, all that fun stuff. Some of you are now quarantined until May 11th. I'm also self-quarantining until May 11th, just out of, safety and precaution for myself, my family, and for you guys. Even though I am fully vaccinated, being fully vaccinated, there is still a small probability of getting COVID and being asymptomatic and doing all that fun stuff. So I don't want to put anyone in that risk as far as I can avoid it. So I'm choosing to quarantine. And I'm also getting tested just for my own peace of mind and all that fun stuff. So that is why class was essentially canceled yesterday, why we didn't have a live meeting. I know that some of you who were on campus yesterday may have been asked to go home and start quarantining and all that fun stuff. I do apologize for the situation. Obviously, it's out of my control. I wasn't, we're doing everything we can at the school site level to make sure that, people are coming into school healthy. Everyone's got to get their temperature checked and, get their little sticker on their way in. And, unfortunately, just because of the nature of this disease, it is possible for someone to not have any symptoms and still have it and still transfer it. And so we have to take all the necessary precautions, to make sure things are okay, or as best as okay as we can get them. So that's why class was kind of canceled at such short notice yesterday. So I did want to address that, and I wanted to know if you guys have any questions or concerns. This is a time that you can ask and be heard. So I know that it's frustrating and maybe upsetting and all that stuff may not be the best words or even be able to describe how you're feeling for those of you who had to go home and quarantine and not be able to participate in any school activities for 2 weeks, not do athletics, not do those things because of this situation. That really just sucks. It sucks for everybody. So I wanted to address that. Does anyone have any questions or comments, concerns for right now? Yeah, so the 11th should be the first day that you can return back to campus, I believe. Yeah, Tuesday the 11th, yeah. That is the 2-week quarantine time frame. Yeah. And at that point, you'll be able to resume activities and all that stuff. Any other questions? Any other concerns? if anything does come up, please feel free to talk to me, communicate that to me, or communicate to your counselor or whoever you feel comfortable talking to. Make sure you're doing what you can to take care of yourself. Remember that even though we're in this hybrid learning, if you do not feel comfortable going to campus because of this situation, you are totally okay to stay remote, right? Even if it's a day that you're supposed to be on campus, as long as you attend your classes remotely, you will not be marked absent. So that is still an option, even if you're on like cohort A, cohort B, anything like that. Yeah, so know that that's an option. Also, moving forward, like obviously if you're feeling any symptoms, stay home. Like runny nose, a little bit of a cough, just not quite right that day, just stay home. Take care of yourself, err on the side of caution. Because like just from what I witnessed yesterday with the amount of students who were impacted by the one positive test, it was like, I would guess between 30 and 40 students that now have to quarantine. So we just want to keep that in mind. Right. Again, not that anyone does this intentionally. I know that the nature of this disease is just like of the virus is sometimes it's just not easy to know who has it, who doesn't have it. So we just have to be very cautious. That was very loud. All right, we'll deal with that later. Sorry, someone tried to call me on another line and it got very loud. All right. Okay, so again, if anything else comes up around this, guys, please feel free to talk to me about it. I'm open to have those conversations. And hopefully we'll be able to move forward and we don't have any more positive cases like this and it'll all be good. Only time will tell. All right, so with that, we're going to move on. We've got a few things that I want to do today. Also because we didn't have a live class yesterday, I've got a couple things from yesterday that I want to make sure that I cover that I was planning to do. So we're going to start with that. Hopefully all my technology wants to work today because yeah, all I have is my laptop, so things I don't have my normal multiple screens to deal with right now. See if that'll go. Okay, so let's try this. That's not what I'm going to do. Okay, let's do that then. Sorry guys, this isn't as easy for me to maneuver with. There it is, that's what I want. Alrighty. So hopefully you guys can see my screen now. I wanted to do just a little bit of a wrap up on chapter 10 and highlight a couple of things that I didn't draw as much attention to as I wanted. Unfortunately, due to time and everything, I don't have a lot of time to do extra examples for this. However, if that's something you need, please let me know. I'd be happy to show some worked examples and post them into Canvas and things. So just as a quick review, right, we have section 10.1, which was comparing to proportions. Right, we're using parameter P sub 1, P sub 2 for the different populations, or P sub some letter or number based on context. We have essentially 3 scenarios in which we can compare two proportions. We can do it with sampling distributions, confidence intervals, and significance tests. Right. When dealing with sampling distributions, we always check 2 conditions, large counts and 10%. Remember, our large counts deals with specifically with populations, proportions, and it's saying that we have at least 10 successes and 10 failures within our sample. And the 10% condition is making sure that we are not sampling more than 10% of our population. Right? Our sample size should be less than or equal to 10%. Sometimes it's sufficient just to say, hey, it's obvious that our sample size is less than 10%. Sometimes if you're given the population size, you can actually show that it is less than 10%, which is preferable if you know the population size. Calculating the mean for the difference of 2 proportions, right? P hat 1 minus P hat 2 is equal to just the difference between the population proportions. And this goes back to what we saw in chapter 7 about sampling distributions. We can also calculate the standard deviation of the difference of the sample proportions. Once again, we use the population proportions, right, P1 and P2, and we get this big old square root, P1 times 1 minus P1 over N1 plus P2 times 1 minus P2 over N2. And that is our standard deviation. When dealing with sampling distributions, typically we know the population proportion, we know the population parameter, so we're able to use it. When dealing with confidence intervals, we usually do not know the population proportion, we don't know the parameter, we're trying to estimate it. That's what the confidence interval allows us to do, is to get an estimation for the range of what the actual parameter might be. When doing confidence intervals, we always check the random 10% when sampling without replacement and large counts conditions. 10% large counts is the same as previously stated. Random condition is that we randomly sampled the individuals in our, whatever we're doing, our sample. And it could also apply to an experiment in which we have random assignment. Right? Either of those things will suffice for random. When conditions are met, we use the 2 sample Z interval for P1 minus P2, which is this crazy formula right here, P hat 1 minus P hat 2, plus or minus the critical value Z star times the standard error, which is again the square root, P hat 1 times 1 minus P hat 1 over N1 plus P hat 2 times 1 minus P hat 2 over N2. Right. The Z star value is determined based on the confidence percentage, right? So for example, if we have 95% confidence interval that we're looking to estimate, then we have 5% left over for each tail, 2.5% for one tail. We go into table A, we find 0.025 on the interior of table A. That corresponds to a Z score, right? It's going to be a negative value for a 0.025, and whatever that is, we use the positive version of that for Z star. That's our critical value. So that is our confidence intervals. We can also do significance tests with our population proportions. This again is a way to estimate, or at least make a conclusion about what values are reasonable, so to say. Right. We check the conditions again, random 10% and large counts. If those conditions are met, we use a 2 sample Z test for P1 minus P2. This specific formula works when we are testing the null hypothesis that P1 minus P2 is 0, meaning there is no difference between the 2 proportions. Right. And we calculate the Z statistic, which we just use Z to use. We have equals P hat 1 minus P hat 2 minus 0, which we get that 0 from the 0 here, divided by, this is the pooled, what's the right word for this? This is essentially the standard error based on the pooled sample proportion. Right, and we have a pooled sample proportion here, which is just the count of successes in both samples. We add them up and divide it by the sample size of both samples added up. And that gives us basically a proportion for everything that was sampled. That is then what we use in the numerator for both of these fractions in our basically standard deviation for the sample. Right, p hat c times 1 minus p hat c over n1 plus p hat c times 1 minus p hat c over n2. We have the same value in the numerator for both. The only thing difference is the sample sizes, if they are different. And this is called the pooled sample proportion or the combined sample proportion, hence little c. And this is something we did not necessarily see an example of in the problems that we saw. So when doing a significance test about the difference of two proportions, and the null hypothesis is that there is no difference, meaning P1 and P2 are equal, then we use the pooled sample proportion in this calculation. Typically, in most cases, we will be assuming that P1 is equal to P2 or that P1 minus P2 equals 0. So we will most of the time just default to using this formula for significance tests when comparing two proportions. Is there anything I can clarify about that? Ay. Guys, can you hold on for a minute? Someone just keeps trying to call me. I'm not realizing people are trying to call me right now. Okay, well, I will try to call them later. I don't know why attendance keeps trying to call me right now. I apologize for the inconvenience. Let's get back to what we're doing. Okay, moving on. So then we get to comparing two means. Again, we have sampling distributions, confidence intervals, and significance tests. Are kind of three major scenarios here that we can, or kind of things we can do. Again, sampling distributions, we have to check for normality, which is large counts for proportions, normal large sample for means. Right? Again, the normal large sample says, and which ties back to our central limit theorem from chapter 7. A sample is large enough or sufficiently large if we have at least 30 individuals in each sample. Or a sampling distribution is approximately normal if the parent population is known to be approximately normal. Otherwise, to check for normality, we have to plot our data, look at the graph, the histogram or the dot plot, and assess its normality. As long as it's not strongly skewed and there's no obvious outliers, we can assume that it is approximately normal and use the normal procedures. And we also check the 10% condition, which is the same as previously stated. We can calculate the mean of the difference of two sample means from two different proportions, two populations, sorry. And that is just equal to the mean of population 1 minus the mean of population 2. And the standard deviation of the difference of two sample means is the square root of the variance from the first population divided by n1 plus the variance of the second population divided by n2. So we can do these calculations. Next, we get our confidence intervals. Again, we have the same three conditions: random, 10%, and normal large sample. The only thing that's been added from sampling distribution is that randomness condition. If conditions are met, we use the 2 sample t interval, right, from mu1 minus mu2. Right, and we do this with this calculation where we have the difference of the 2 sample means, x bar 1 minus x bar 2 plus or minus the critical value t star, which again we find t star using table B, and whatever the confidence percentage is, we get that along the bottom row of table B. We go along to the degree of freedom, which we will use whichever is lower, n1 minus 1 or n2 minus 1. So we have one value to use, whichever one is smaller. Find the value that corresponds with the confidence percentage, and that's our critical value, t star. And the standard error is what's in the square root there. The variance of sample 1 divided by n1 plus the variance of sample 2 divided by n2. And that will give us our confidence interval by doing the addition and subtraction. All right, and then we have our significance test. When doing significance tests for population means, we check our conditions, random, 10%, normal, large sample. We use the 2 sample t-test for mu1 minus mu2 if the conditions are met, which we calculate the t statistic, right? T equals the difference between the sample means minus the difference of the population means. And typically the difference of the population means here will be 0, because we will usually be testing the null hypothesis that mu1 minus mu2 is 0, but there are cases where we might have some hypothesized value. Whatever that hypothesized value is, that will go in here for the mu1 minus mu2. And we then divide that by the standard error. We will use table B with degrees of freedom, whichever one is lower, n1 minus 1 or n2 minus 1, along with the t statistic, and we will get a range for the significance test values between 0.01 and 0.02 or something like that, because we're typically not going to land exactly on a t value. Is there anything I can clarify about the comparing two means procedures that we have here? So lastly, something I didn't get a chance to really go over in class was the difference or comparing matched pairs T procedures to 2 sample T procedures. Matched pairs was something that we saw at the very end of chapter 9 that essentially still uses 1 sample T procedures because we get a single value that we're then using. 2 sample T procedures is what we're using now in chapter 10, where we're getting 2 separate populations or groups that we're getting values from, and we're comparing those. Right, so we have these different scenarios here, and each one is either going to be 2 sample or matched pairs. Right. So I want to just highlight the 2 matched pairs ones. Right, so number 2 here is a matched pairs procedure. To test the effect of background music on productivity, factory workers are observed. For 1 month, each subject works without music. For another month, the subject works while listening to music on an MP3 player. The month in which each subject listens to music is determined by a coin toss, so there's our randomization. Right? This is a matched pairs because there's one individual who's getting 2 different procedures, and then we're comparing which one was more effective for each individual. So ultimately, we will have a difference between productivity, and that difference is what we will use to do a 1 sample T procedure on. In most of these other examples here that are 2 sample, there are 2 separate populations or groups that we're collecting data on and then comparing those. Right? The other matched pairs T procedure here that shows up is we're comparing the average weight gain of pigs fed 2 different rations. We have 9 pairs of pigs that were used. The pigs in each pair were litter mates. Right? A coin toss was used to decide which pig in each pair got ration A and which got ration B. So again, the thing that we're going to be calculating with and using at the end of this is we're going to have a difference between weight gain of the 2 paired pigs in each pair. that single value of the difference is in what we use to do a one sample t procedure. In the rest of these scenarios, dealing with our means, we'll get a sample mean from one population, a sample mean from the other population, and we'll compare those two. Okay, so that's kind of the difference you're looking for. Is there, in my experiment, do I end up looking at a difference for each individual, or am I looking at a difference from a population or group? If we're looking at individual sets, like individual people or individual pairs, and we're getting a difference, matched pairs. Otherwise, two sample. Is there anything I can clarify on that for you? All right, and then, pardon me, these notes here are posted in yesterday's calendar on Canvas. So those are available. I'll also add them into the module so they're a little easier to find. So you guys can go back through these if you'd like. All right, so next we're going to look at some of the stuff for preparing for the AP exam. Before I get into that, I do want to mention that there are some computers that might be available to you guys. So last year there was a bunch of new computers ordered that didn't get here till this year, specifically for the AP programs here at the school. These computers can be available to you if you are concerned about your computer being able to manage the AP digital exam app. So if you're not sure if your computer has the right specifications, or if you've been using like an iPad or your phone to do all your schoolwork, and you don't have necessarily a reliable laptop or computer at home that you will be able to test on, then this is a resource you want to take advantage of. In order to qualify for these, they're NIMSY computers. We got these from NIMSY, which is an organization that helps support us with our AP testing. You have to be taking the AP exam to qualify to try to check out one of these computers from the library. You need to be able to return your school provided device when picking up the new device from the library. And you should be able to pick this up before the end of the week, unfortunately. And that is just because there's a limited amount of these computers, and they're giving our class, so to say, our AP Stats and AP Calc first shot at these. And then they're going to allow other AP courses to see if their students need them. So that doesn't mean you won't be able to get one next week. It's just that they're going to start opening it up to other students, so the availability will decrease. So is there any questions about that? So essentially just go to the library and say that you need a NIMSY laptop. If you don't have a school device already and you're checking out one for the first time, there's no need to return a school device. So you should just be able to check out a NIMSY laptop to use for testing, which you then return at the end of the school year or after testing. Is there any questions? So then I've got a little presentation here about the AP exam app and what we're going to be doing with that. So let's see if that wants to work here. Let's try. Let's see if this goes. All right, so hopefully you can see this presentation. This is from College Board to help us kind of give you guys this information that you need. So, here we go. So before the exam day, you need to download the app. If you have a school-provided Chromebook or laptop, this application should have already been pushed out to the computer, to your device. So you want to check for that. It should be a little application. It looks like a little acorn, essentially is the image for it. So again, we can now download this application. It became available in April. To download the digital testing app, I'm going to put a website in the chat here that will take you to the page to download it. It is cb.org/AP 2021 exam app. Yeah. All right. So if you go to this website, you will go to the page that looks like kind of the one on the screen here, download the digital testing app. All right, it will work on Windows or Mac operating systems. I think it senses your operating system and asks you to download the proper one. I'm not entirely sure. All right, so you can follow the steps on the screen to download the app. You need to download the app on the device you will be testing on. So if you're planning on using one of the NIMSY devices, don't do this yet. All right, because once you're registered and signed up for like your exams, you cannot take your exams on any other laptop. All right, once this app is up and running, so to say, that is the laptop you got to use. All right. So before exam day, you need to log in. You can do this at any time before your exams. So if you download the app today and you log in, that's good. You can do that now. You'll need your College Board username and password to use the app. If you check Remember Me, you won't need to log in each time you return. Three days before the test day, you need to complete exam setup. You cannot do this before 3 days before. You'll get this option 3 days out. And it's wise to do this 3 days out. Don't wait till the morning of and be like, oh no, I did not do exam setup. You're going to have problems. All right. You must complete the exam setup for every digital AP exam you take, and it's critical that you complete this step before test day. All right. Gotta get done. 30 minutes before your exam, you need to check in. Okay, so 30 minutes before your exam start time, you'll launch the app and check in for your exam. You'll review some privacy policies, type a security statement, and get ready to test. It's important that you check in on time. You won't be able to check in once your exam starts. Right, so if you're running late and your exam start time is at 12 and you have not completed the check-in, you're going to have to try to schedule a retake. You will not be able to check in. So it is critical that you get to your exam testing date and time on time, or early. I would say early. Early in this case is going to be on time. Right before the exam begins, the app will lock your device. You'll need to close all other applications before testing begins. Right? You won't be able to navigate out of the testing environment once the test begins. Right? This applies even to the practice exams. Right? We'll do some practice exams in here using this application. Once it's in lockdown mode, it's there. The timer needs to run out, so to say, unless you complete things early. Digital exams start automatically. If you finish check-in before your exam start time, you'll see a timer counting down. When time expires, the exam will start automatically. There'll just be a little timer at the top of the screen. You will get directions when you start the test, right? These directions actually just kind of pop up automatically. At the top left, you'll be able to click to like minimize it or continue, right? They're section specific, it'll give you the details for that section of the test that you're starting. However, when the test starts. This screen pops up and the timer starts running. So you don't want to take too much time reading this if you don't need to, because it is eating into your time. Right? Testing toolbar, there will be a timer, right? We get that timer right up at the top of the screen. During the exam, a timer will count down the time remaining for each section. You can hide the timer, except during the last 5 minutes of a section. Once time expires on the last section of the exam, your answers will be submitted automatically. Okay. You have this annotation option here. You can highlight any part of a passage or question that you might want to return to or leave yourself a note to organize your thoughts. This can be useful while doing free response questions. You do not need to make a note in order to highlight or underline. You just have the option to make a note. You could just highlight and then hit continue in that little box. You do not need to make a note to yourself if you don't want to. In most STEM courses, AP Stats included, you'll have access to a reference sheet with commonly used formulas. This is the formulas and tables that I've been providing you guys often lately, right? You're going to have a similar copy of that in your reference sheet. Right? If your AP exam requires or allows calculators, you must bring your own. Again, we need to start using that TA84 calculator and learning how to do this stuff on that, because that is the calculator you will be able to use. You can zoom in and zoom out to get a closer look at any part of a question. You can find the zoom in, zoom out buttons under More. You can also make one side of the screen bigger than the other with the expand left or expand right controls. Those are in the middle of the screen there. So there's a little bit of adjusting things you can do to help yourself see what's on the screen a little better. On every screen, you have access to a help page where you can view frequently asked questions. All right, just telling you stuff about the exam. Keep in mind, again, if you're in the testing environment and you're looking at this, your timer is going. All right, so you might want to take advantage of the practice exams and things to look at these things, because it's essentially probably going to be the same set of frequently asked questions as on the actual exam. We'll have multiple choice questions. Most AP exams are a combination of multiple choice and free response questions. Some multiple choice questions are centered on the screen, while others have stimulus content on the left and questions and answers on the right. On multiple choice questions, you won't be able to move back and forth between questions or return to questions you've already answered. Right? But you do want to remember there's no penalty for guessing. It's better to try randomly guess than to just leave it blank. Right? It's not like you lose more points if it's wrong than not answering it. So you give yourself a shot by guessing. Right? But again, this is a key thing. You cannot move back and forward in the questions. Once you submit your answer, it's going to give you this reminder. And then you'll say, yeah, let's move on. That's it. You cannot go back. Breaks between sections. Between sections, you'll have a break. The timer will let you know when the next section starts, just like at the beginning of the exam. When the time expires, the exam will resume automatically. Right, so make sure to make a note of how much time you have there, and make sure to get back on time. Especially if you're at home and you go to get a snack or use the restroom. Don't overstay your break. Free response questions. On free response questions, you'll type directly into the app and all your work will be saved automatically. Any special characters you need are available in the text editor. There are no files to upload, and you won't submit any handwritten work. Everything will be typed. Right? Even with the stats exam, it's going to be typed. Right? From what I've been told, you will not be expected to obviously not draw a histogram, right? Because you can't draw and upload it. Okay. After, what's going on here? There we go. After your exam, answer submission. When testing time expires, the app will end the exam and your completed answers will be submitted automatically. Do not exit the app until you see congratulations message confirming that we have received your answers. So if you see this window, testing complete, stand by, don't do anything, just wait. Don't close your computer, don't close the app, don't move. Wait for it. Then you'll get this screen, you're all set. You can check AP students to see when your results will be posted. And once you see this screen, you can return to home and look at that screen and see what tests you have upcoming or tests that you've already taken. After your exam, answer submission incomplete. If your internet connection drops at the end of the test, we'll show you some immediate steps that you'll take to complete your answer submission. If you run into an issue you can't recover from, you can go to My AP and request a makeup. Okay. So on testing day, make sure you're somewhere that you have very reliable internet. Because it would suck to get through the entire exam and then have it drop at the end here when you're trying to submit and you might have to do a makeup test. That would suck. Next steps, in early April or sometime in April, you'll be able to download the app and start practicing. You'll need your College Board username and password to use the exam app, so make sure you have that info handy. Good luck on your 2021 digital AP exam. And this is kind of what the interface looks like. We have practice that, as of right now, practice is all that you'll be able to see. Right, there's digital practice, there's two different forms. There's the app demo and the digital practice. The app demo is shorter and just gives you a brief overview of what the registration and 30 minutes before and you know, the 3-day out, 30 minutes before, and all the like day of stuff is. And a little bit of what the questions will look like. The digital practice is a longer version of that, where you'll still get the like 3 days out registration, 30 minutes before, you know, starting the exam, but you'll have more questions to practice with. It takes a little bit longer. Okay. We will probably do the digital practice in class next week, so that you guys get a real good sense of what testing will feel like. All right. So there's that. And that's the end of this presentation. All right, and so very briefly, let's do a look into what this looks like. All right, so this is kind of what the digital exam app looks like. Sometimes this app takes like 5 minutes or more to load and get ready. So once it's downloaded, like when you're looking to do stuff with it, make sure you open it up early. During first period, I opened this up and it took like 7 or 8 minutes for it to finally open. I'm not sure why the app does that, but it takes a while. Once you're in, since I've already logged into the app, it knows that I'm logged in and asks if this is me. If it is your first time, you'll have to log in, as it said on the presentation. Maybe we can continue. Right. Obviously, I have no exams, active exams here. Active exams or exams that you've registered for will show up here 5 days before the exam. So obviously right now, even if you're registered for the AP Stats exam, it's not going to show up here because we're not 5 days away. Right. Past exams, exams you've already taken, will show up in past exams. Right. This goes with any exam you take. Right. We go to practice here, and you should see 2 practice options. You can do these practice options more than once if you like. There's a way to reset it. It actually tells you how to reset it when you get to the end of the practice, or if you run out of practice things to do. Right. And so again, when you start exam setup, the exam setup is what you're supposed to do 3 days out. Right. It's going through all the different things, which I'm not going to demo right now because we don't need to. We'll do that next week when we do a practice exam. But again, so this is kind of what it looks like. All right. Are there any questions? I know that was a lot. Is there anything you need help? Did anyone try to download the app on their own computer, and was it successful? Does anyone have a district provided device that does not have the application on it? This would be a great time to check and tell me if things aren't there. Again, on my side, I can check to see if you have successfully downloaded the app and logged into it. It shows me on like I have a little dashboard that tells me who's registered and who has logged into the app. So as we get closer, I might start bugging people who haven't done it yet. So if it's not cooperating, if you can't download the app, if it's not on your school provided device, I need to know so that we can get it fixed. All right. And yeah. Is there any questions? All right. So lastly, the Chapter 10 assessments are available in Canvas now. They have the multiple choice and the free response questions are both posted. So you are welcome to begin those whenever you are ready. We may or may not start Chapter 11 next week. I know I want to do some of this AP practice stuff, and I might want to do a little more review with previous chapters. Let's say previous chapters before starting Chapter 11. And I'm considering just combining the last few chapters into a single kind of unit to try to make things work a little better. So, but I need to figure that out myself first. That's the idea. All right. If there are no other questions, comments, concerns, anything like that, that's all that I have for today. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you all next week.